Today we have Bill Meehan. Welcome to the show. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Close enough. Yes. Yeah. Good to be here.
Awesome. Senior Engineer Manager at Warner Brothers Discovery. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing. I have been at HBO slash Warner Media slash Warner Brothers Discovery for 12 and a half years, which I think is a rarity in today's world. So I
Oh,
spent
definitely. Yeah, definitely.
I currently head up a team that does A/B testing, experimentation, and we also have a feature flag platform. So I manage a team of 7 engineers, and we build the platform for all of our customers to use. And by customers, I mean like our ad platform, our CMS team, our buy flow people. Those are our customers. And we allow them to do A/B test, multi-arm banded tests, and also we have a great feature flag platform for them to do all their feature flagging.
Now, for our listeners, can you describe what A/B testing is?
Yeah, so we have a decision engine that we built, and you set up an experiment. Let's say we want to see which rail does better on the homepage. Like we're just going to change the title, for example. So you come in as a user, and we're going to expose a certain percentage of people to one rail, and a certain percentage to a different rail, and then maybe a third rail that was the default that was there before. And then whenever the user requests that page, they reach out to our platform and say, hey, what's the decision for this particular individual? And then we give a result. We say, hey, show this person treatment 1. And then we track that user and see if their behavior changes. Do they click on that rail? Do they interact with it more? Does it increase or decrease how many minutes they watch that week? And then we can determine, hey, this is actually doing really well. And we can actually make that the permanent one there going forward. And you can do that with pretty much anything on our platform. You can test and then see the results of it and how it impacts user behavior.
And so it's really all about the user's interaction. Is that right?
Yeah. So it's how does making these changes affect the platform as a whole? And really, what you want to avoid is really hurting the experience for the user. Because if you're doing it blind, you can make some changes and you could really hurt your platform and you won't even know it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this way you can watch it very closely, and if your experiment is having really bad results and people are going off the site and minutes watched is going down, we can halt that experiment. And you know that if you would have made that change without doing the experiment, you would have really hurt the business.
Right.
Yeah, so it's really pretty interesting, and I work very closely with the data scientists. They're the ones who crunch all the numbers on the back end. A lot of really advanced math that I don't know, but we make amazing dashboards to display that data where it makes sense to our business users.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. As a senior manager, do you also do coding, or is it just mostly overseeing the other engineers?
Yeah, so I don't do any coding right now, and I probably haven't in a number of years. Most of my coding I do now is in my basement for Arduinos. No coding. I'm really guiding the team, making sure our priorities have the things prioritized correctly, make sure that we're hitting our delivery dates. Also, the whole other part that comes with managing a team is making sure the team is happy and growing and challenged, getting promoted, getting bonuses. That's probably my favorite part of the job, is actually managing the people.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. So like, how do you? So you say you do more of your programming in your free time?
I do. Yes, I do more programming in my free time than I do at work. I am involved in code reviews, testing, things like that. Also writing architectural documents. Very involved in that. But actual coding, my team I could probably do the coding. What I could do in a day, my lead engineer could do in 20 minutes. So I leave it to the
That's impressive.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you kind of spoke about like maximizing their value, enhancing what they do. Can you speak on how you make your team more productive?
Yeah. Um, so I've been managing people for a really long time. Even when I got uh, out of high school, I was a carpenter for a while. So I was managing carpenters. And then when I went back to college, uh, after I graduated, I immediately went to managing people. And some of the philosophies I've developed over the years um, uh, is to really respect people. Make sure that you understand where their head is at, and know what they like, know what they don't like, know how they behave, and when things are going wrong and they're a problem. So generally, a motivated team, a happy team, is a productive team, and I really got to keep my pulse on your personality conflicts, people that are struggling, when to put the pressure on, when to take the pressure off. Somebody's going through something in their personal life, I'll back up a little bit, give them a little bit of a break. Life is messy, and you got to give people benefit of the doubt. So
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Um, so uh, that's really worked well for me. As long as I have my finger on the pulse of the morale of the team, I know who's getting along with who works well with others, and can sense when morale is going bad. I mean, we've had the past 12 years, we've had a lot of ups and downs. We've changed owners, we've changed management more times than I remember. So it's really hard to keep the team morale up. But if you focus on the product at hand, you focus on producing high quality software, and that's the reward in itself.
Absolutely. So, like when there's a lot of turbulence, can you typically describe like how that affects the team, and how do you keep them on track and keep them from just veering off?
Yeah, it's difficult. So you have first. I'm kind of in the same boat as they are. I'm not senior leadership, so when things are bad, they're bad for me too. So I commiserate with them when appropriate, but I also have to refocus them and saying, even if we all lose our jobs tomorrow, we're doing stuff that's cool and we're learning stuff. Let's focus on that, and let's deliver. And that message usually comes through.
Yeah, that sounds important.
Yeah, absolutely. And every team is different, and every company is different. But with those basic philosophies, it seems to work across the board.
And do you prefer management versus, being an individual contributor?
Yeah, I actually really do. So you know, I I'm sitting and coding all day is something I never really enjoyed. I can code, and I did code for a living. I was a Java engineer. I was a front end engineer for a while. So I can code, but when I have to do it all day long for day and day at a time, I just go nuts. But as a manager, I can
Yeah.
yeah, I can peek into here. I can hop over to there, work on this document for a while, go to this meeting about something that's going to go on in the future, and that keeps me interested.
Yeah, I mean, I had a similar situation. I used to be a React front end developer. And yeah, like you're saying, like the all day coding was just a lot. And I didn't expect it would be that hard, but it really was. And I had no mentorship. So
Oh,
I ended up quitting. I was a React developer for like 2 weeks.
oh
And
no.
then I quit and went to technical recruiting. Didn't like that either. And now I'm back doing music again. So, as me and Kevin talk about often, we're both very spiritual. God will open doors and God will close doors. You just have to be ready to make the move when the time is right.
And actually, when you just said, I'm a little jealous because you're doing your art as your living. That's really amazing. That's
I'm blessed. Yeah, no,
yeah,
I'm blessed for sure.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, you said you couldn't get a mentor. Was there not a mentor program at the company you were at?
It was severely lacking in terms of that. I mean,
Yeah,
they didn't tell me this before I signed on because they were bringing me on as a junior React developer.
yeah,
And so I get there first, day one, they send me the code base. Okay. So, okay, I'm downloading that, got that loaded up. Okay, great. Then they were just pretty much like, okay, we need these features built out. Can you handle that? And I was like, well, maybe let me take a look at the code base first. And I couldn't really make too much sense out of it.
yeah,
For instance, they used vanilla CSS. They
yep,
didn't use CSS processors like Tailwind. I was more comfortable using Tailwind. They said, no, the clients that we have don't want Tailwind. So, it was a struggle right from the very beginning. And then when I asked for training, when I asked for mentorship, they said, oh, well, we can't take our senior developer off of his workload. So they're like, we don't have formal training. And I'm like, gee, I wish I would have known that before I got signed up with you guys.
well, never mind training. They didn't even onboard you. They handed you code and said, produce. That's terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's terrible, right?
Yeah,
So that's why I don't program anymore. I had such a bad taste in my mouth that I was like, is this how it's going to be at every company?
no, it really isn't. If you would have come and worked for me and we were onboarding you, the onboarding process is like 90 days. And
Oh,
um,
wow.
yeah, so we would have a plan for you. What are you going to do in the first 90 days? What are your goals? And we would work with you every day to make sure you have access to Git. You can make your first simple PR. You know how to get it out into the lower environments for testing. We'd have one of our senior engineers work with you and make sure that you're all set up and all your tools are in the right spot. And then during our one-on-ones, we would talk about, hey, how are you doing on on your 90-day plan? Oh, you kind of missed this milestone. Like, what happened? Let's talk about it. And then you'll get you extra help there. So
That sounds amazing. Yeah, compared to what I experienced, that sounds unreal.
yeah, that's too bad you had that experience. I don't know how anybody could succeed like that, especially coming in.
Yeah, I don't know. These days they love to use that term. Oh, we need you to hit the ground running.
Uh, they didn't even give you any ground to run on. So yes.
Yeah. So no, it was pretty bad. It was pretty awful thinking back. But like I said, I think God closed that door for a reason and has led me back to my music, and I'm very happy for that.
Yeah, so maybe there was a reason for that bad experience to get you back to your music.
Yeah, I don't think there's any coincidences. I think I truly believe that everything happens for a reason. And I met Kevin for a reason. We're doing this podcast for a reason. I don't know what that reason is, but we're doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's amazing how things are interconnected and how they play off each other. Yeah, it's really
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a problem at a lot of companies. I've been at a variety of different companies, and pretty much the commonality among a lot of them is, here's a code base, figure it out. And if it's geared towards self learners and people who spend all day coding, which, I mean, I love coding, that's me. But for somebody who doesn't particularly have that mindset, they need something more structured. It's a plan for failure. So
Yeah, exactly. And it's a very rare individual who can just sit down at a code base and figure it out in 2 weeks. I mean, that's really hard to do.
exactly. So how do you onboard? Like, well, you did mention a little bit about it, but like, say Brian was to join your company,
Yep.
how would you like really help get him on board and guarantee that he's able to translate those skills from boot camp to being a successful contributor?
Yeah, it's exactly like I said. I think the plan is really important, and to be able to go back to that plan and see where we are and are we hitting those milestones, and pairing you up with a senior engineer who can help with the questions. Oh, hey, this isn't working. Hey, it's not compiling. Hey, I can't access Artifactory. All these kind of things, to be available for questions and get quick responses. And you're sticking to those milestones, getting the help that you need. After 90 days, you should feel confident that, hey, I know this code really well enough to produce features. Still going to have questions, still going to be working through it. You got to, for a code base, especially it's complicated, something that we're doing, it's a year before you can say, hey, I'm an expert in this code base. And I understand that. And I know that you'll get to know this piece of the code, then you get to know this piece of the code. And it takes time, and you need to have realistic.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I was expected to just know it right, immediately, which was ridiculous.
It is, and every code base is different. Even if you're doing this React project, that React project, every project is different, has different quirks. Just like every engineer is different. So yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're a really good manager.
Thank you. I try to be. The one thing that kind of gives me a little bit of confidence with managing people is that there's some people that I've managed for a decade, and they love working under me, and they know that I have their back, and they know that
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with them, and that's why I can really build a cohesive team, and having a cohesive team allows you to really produce some good stuff, and so that's worked really well for me.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, you mentioned a really important point, which is having the backs of your team.
Yeah.
There's a lot of managers who things get hectic, they throw their team under the bus. But I know if you're a good manager, you're going to go to bat for your team and kind of even protect them from maybe higher levels of management. And, I think they really appreciate that, and it makes them willing to work harder.
That's exactly right. They know that when I'm going into calibrations, and what I say in that meeting is going to, their bonus is hanging on that. They know that I have their back, and I'm going to represent them the best way I possibly can. And they also see it with promotions. Getting people promoted is the thing that makes me the most proud about being a manager, to see that engineer grow and really get to the next level. And then, hey, they get more money, they get bigger bonuses. And yeah, that's the rewarding part of being a manager.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely relate to that. I teach drums. So, one of my students right now, he's 9 years old, and he's only been playing for a couple of weeks. And it's pretty incredible, though. Both of his parents sing in the church.
Yep.
And they bring him, and they sit him down in front of the drums at the church for 2 songs every week. So they just kind of throw him into it. So he's able to play stuff. I'll show him 8th note triplets, 16th note triplets. He's able to play this stuff without knowing what it is. It's pretty incredible.
You're a drum teacher. Oh, that's very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's primarily what I do, but I also do session work.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a self-taught musician, and so I can't read music, but if I hear it, I can play it. So
yeah, I'm mostly self-taught. I mean, I used to go through a lot of books, but my teaching these days, it all revolves around feel and groove.
Very cool. Yeah, that's the way I probably would learn much better, for sure.
So yeah, you kind of mentioned you like watching your team get promoted. So going from something like junior to senior or junior to mid-level, what do developers really need to know? Like if you were to mentor them and tell them what do they need to know? How do they prepare to go from, say, junior to mid-level, and then mid-level to senior, and then senior to whatever that next level is?
Yeah, so the levels that we have are, entry level out of college. Then we have junior engineer level. We call that SE2. Then we have senior. Then we have staff. Then we have senior staff, and then you get up into the principal engineer levels. So, and each level is progressively more difficult to attain that level. So, one thing that is critical is that the HR department needs to, and also the engineering department need to really outline what are the expectations for the level that you're at. What are the expectations for the next level? And really, to get somebody promoted, you have to show that they're already performing at that next level, or if they are almost already performing at that next level, maybe have to work on a few things. And if I see that in a person where they're really trying, they're really going the extra mile, I will go to bat for them. I will gather the feedback, create the promotion doc, and go into that panel and talk about how this engineer has really excelled in this, and also talk about some of the areas where they do need to improve once they do get promoted. They always ask that, and so it's really just making sure that you're checking all the boxes, and that's just the engineering side. That's like, hey, you're a great engineer and you're engineering at the next level. But then there's all the soft skills too that come along with it that Warner Brothers Discovery has actually said is really important to the promotion process. Is do you demonstrate the core tenets of what Warner Brothers Discovery, and I don't remember them all at the moment, but some is like act as one team, dream what's next. They have so sort of these different areas, and you also have to show that, hey, you're fulfilling those things too.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it's always important to not only just do the level of the job you're at, but to go beyond and start doing the work of the level that you want to be at, and then somebody will see you and pull you up.
Exactly. Yeah. And along those lines, when other people from other teams, they interact with you and see the job you're doing, when I need to get feedback from them, they're like, oh yeah, I remember that. We worked on this project together. They did great. And they're willing to do it. So yeah, that's exactly right.
And it really, to me, sounds like there's just a lot of mutual respect going on at your company.
Definitely in my team, I demand it. And I think the most teams we interact with are like that. Of course, there's difficult people in every company, but
sure.
But I think for the large part, people that I work with really care about what we're doing, and are respectful of other teams and each other.
Yeah, no, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned the soft skills, so I know, like, just being able to communicate with other developers is very important. But has there ever been a situation where, okay, this guy is a coding genius, but he doesn't have the greatest personality. He might be snappy, or he's just somebody that likes to stay isolated. Is that someone that you would actively court on your team, or would you try to?
I've managed all types, and that's probably the more difficult one to really deal with, is somebody who is excellent. Their code is impeccable. They know their stuff, and but they're difficult to work with. And if it becomes a problem and it ruins a team dynamic, I'm going to have to, first of all, have several discussions with you, or maybe think maybe you should change teams. But even if you're the best coder in the world, I don't want you ruining my team dynamic. So I've dealt with those people before. Usually it's between the conversations and working with them for a long period of time, we can smooth out the rough edges and make it work out. But sometimes it doesn't, and you got to go to the next step and say, hey, it's not working out. Let's try to get you a different team, or depending on how bad it is, fire them.
Right. I mean, it sounds like you sort of set your team members up with a plan, like a 90-day plan. And then after that, there's, maybe a 6-month plan.
Yeah. So it's definitely continually discussing, where during our one-on-ones is where are they with 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 their career growth, and what are the kind of projects we need to get you on in order to get to that next step. And that's difficult sometimes. You have a critical project coming up, and you know that one of your junior engineers would really benefit from running that project or writing that ADD, but there's only so many of those to go around, and that's a difficult thing. But constantly being cognizant of what are the needs of this person to get to the next level, and make sure that everybody has a chance to shine.
Yeah, no, that sounds great.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. You've been in the software industry for a very long time, like
Very long time. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, yeah. It's so like I said before, I graduated high school in 1985, and I actually thought I was going to be a rock star. I was a carpenter for 7 years, and went back to college, and I got into Wesleyan University, and I was actually studying biology. But I had a Commodore 64 in the early 80s, and I would code on that thing like crazy. And then when I had a chance in college to take a computer science class, I took it, and I really loved it. So I took a lot of computer science classes, but I was still majored in biology. And then it was an internship time during the summer, and there was these ads. I forget where I was even looking, probably the school newspaper. And it said, lab assistant needed, must have master's, $8 an hour. And then right below it had computer science majors, $22 to start. And I was like, okay, I'm doing something wrong here. So in my senior year, I changed my major to computer science, and took 4 level 400 classes each semester, and was able to eke out a diploma out of that.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
So that was a pretty crazy time. But when I got out, my first job was at Lockheed Martin, and we were building ground stations for satellites, and that was very cool. We were out in Silicon Valley working on that project, and that's just as the .com boom was kind of happening. And I just saw like, wow, I need to get into one of these .coms, because that's where the money is. Even though the work at Lockheed Martin was very interesting. And then I went off and worked for a company called Zuma, XUMA, and I think I was employee 6 or 7. Within a year, we had like 300 employees, and offices in New York and Las Vegas, and on paper, I was worth millions of dollars. And in 3 years, we spent, I think, $160 million, and then it was all gone. And the .com bubble burst, and then pretty much, we had nothing. But it was a wild ride for sure. I forgot what my point for that was. I was going to talk about the technology we were using. Yeah. So when I first graduated, we were using a thing called Intershop. I don't know if you've ever heard of Intershop, but they were an e-commerce platform, and it was all in Perl. So and CGI bin and Perl was where we mostly we're doing most of our work there. And I remember things like trying to install a security certificate in 1997. It was insane compared to now, where you click a few buttons and you're good to go. So it was kind of the Stone Age.
Yeah, programming was pretty difficult back then. I know a lot of the de jure languages were assembly, C, C++. So like in the 90s, I personally found that a little too difficult for me to learn as a teenager. So that's when I just took a break and went a different route, and then came back later.
The company that I was working for at the time, we were doing C++ things to create email accounts and things like that. And it is really difficult. And when something goes wrong, it's like there was no help.
Right, it's like one semicolon's out of place and the whole thing won't run.
And you get some bizarre linker error, and you're like, what does this mean? And at that time the web was just so primitive. Maybe there's a little bit of information out there, but you were on your own. You just had to figure it out.
No Stack Overflow.
No Stack Overflow.
No Google. Yeah.
Yeah, right. No Copilot. So
it's hard to imagine now. Yeah, looking back.
So it was pretty crazy times. We were just figuring out like what is e-commerce? How does it work? How do you create a things that we were just figuring out is how do you create a workable shopping basket on a shopping cart on a website. How do you do that? What does it look like? Or is it a pop-up? How do you take things in and out of the cart? Those things didn't exist. We had to figure it out as we went. So yeah, really interesting times.
Yeah, I know compilers were really slow back then too. Like you start the process and it just take forever, and if you make a mistake, you got to do it all over.
Wait, what was that? What takes forever?
Oh, compiling code back then.
Yes. Compiling took forever, and the internet connections were really slow. I remember I was in one of Level 3's first like big centers in San Francisco, and we were directly plugged in, and one of the engineers said, "Look, come over, look at this," and he was able to download something at a megabit a second, and that was amazing. So, I mean, now your phone gets 100 megabits a second. So,
right.
Yeah. So it was definitely a different world back then. So
different times, yeah.
Different times, and so after the dot-com bubble burst, I'm just talking about my history a little bit here. I worked for a company called SpaFinder for a while. Basically, I built it. I was one of the lead engineers there, and we built it from the ground up. And you were able to book spa appointments and buy gift certificates. So I was there for several years. But after that, I went to the National Basketball Association, and I think that's where I really started to sort of learn corporate America. Is really my first real dip my toe into corporate America. And working for the NBA was hard. They work you really hard there, and I guess I was younger at the time, and it didn't seem so bad. But thinking about when a game started at Seattle Supersonics game started at 10:30. Oh my God, it was going to be a long night. So worked at the NBA for about 6 years before I moved over to HBO.
What were some of those corporate lessons that you learned that kind of differed from the previous company?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. So, just what's okay and how to behave in a corporate, environment. How to interact with other people in a corporate environment. Um, uh, how to interact with senior leadership. I think is probably the biggest thing that I learned while at NBA. I was um, um, sitting there with all these higher ups in the NBA and talking about things, and I think it really helped to be able to communicate to senior leadership.
I know, like early on, tech was really casual. You could pretty much show up in whatever you wanted, or at a lot of companies. Like at my first job, I even went to the job in like sweatpants and just a t-shirt. And I know I shouldn't have did that, but they didn't really technically care. But I know that it kind of affects the way people look at you. So working in corporate America, I'm sure like there's like small things you have to polish that you can't do at a more laid back quote unquote tech bro company.
Yeah, that's really true. So when I went to the NBA, I mean everybody wore a button down shirt, um, some sort of dress pants and shoes every day, and that was the minimal. Some people wore a suit and tie to work every day. And then when I went over to HBO, it was actually surprisingly now. Most people wore a sports coat or a tie to work every single day. anybody who was in a manager position definitely did. And then we opened up a Seattle office. And the influence from the Seattle office was they would wear Hawaiian shirts, shorts, and flip-flops and come into meetings with senior leadership. And immediately nobody wore sports jackets anymore. Everybody got casual, and actually I like it much better. It's much easier just to wear whatever you want. Dress up if you want to, but now it's kind of gone back a little bit where people do dress up a little bit more. But during that time in like 2014, 2018 or so, it was like, wear shorts, wear a t-shirt.
So it's just like a free for all.
Free for all, yeah. So it's kind of come around a little bit. People do dress up a little more now, and Seattle is definitely different than New York. But in New York, yeah, people do dress up a little bit more than they used to.
Oh yeah, the West Coast is so different from like the Northeast.
It definitely is. But I'm really glad they opened up that Seattle office, because I got to meet some amazing people, and just sort of the whole learned a lot from the people in Seattle on how to really be a technology company, where when I first joined HBO, it was the second season of Game of Thrones, and we were just sort of a free add-on to your cable subscription, and we were pretty much run that way. There was no engineering rigor at that point. And working with the people from Seattle, actually, yeah, they really showed us a lot of ways to do things with some engineering rigor, and how do you deploy code, how do you lint your code, how do you write code, so yeah, so it was a good experience.
That's
What
awesome.
are some of the more important code practices that you implement now? I know you mentioned linting, maybe unit tests. Is there like design patterns? What are some of the typical implements that improve the code base?
Well, I think all of those things, and probably the most important thing is the code reviews. When having my most senior staff engineer sort of bless the code before it goes out. The conversations that go back and forth, say, hey, you could do it this way. Hey, you could do it that way. I think that's probably the most important step, is to have that conversation, make sure everybody's on board with the approach that you're taking. And then the unit test and the linting and all those things, they're tools that you use to make sure the quality is there, but it's the conversations and how you build the code, and that we're going in a direction that's future-proofing. Things like that really help.
Nice. Now, what would you say the biggest difference is from the MBA and then going to work at HBO?
I think the biggest difference is the expectations. There is zero work-life balance working at the NBA. I haven't worked there in 12 years, so I don't know what's like there now. So, and I'm not, maybe it's a great place to work now, but when I was there, it was constant. If one of my engineers didn't get an on-call alert and it came to me and I didn't answer it in 15 minutes, there was hell to pay, and we got alerts all the time. And
oh wow.
So that means that as a manager, I was always on call, and my team missed alerts constantly. So it would be 1 o'clock in the morning. The final scores didn't come through. You got to work on that till 3 o'clock in the morning. Then there's a meeting at 7:30 you have to make. And, it was
wow.
I really have PTSD from the whole experience.
Right. That sounds intense, man. Yeah, it sounds intense.
And then I went to HBO, which it's different now, but back then I was like, well, what is the on-call like? And they're like, there's no on-call for managers. No, you're good. And I was like, really? So it was like,
yeah, it
was like I died and went to heaven. Now it's a little bit different now. Of course, we have tier 1 services, and if something goes wrong, I do want to know, but because we're so careful and we have all the tools in place that our our 7.1 and 7.2 instances are few and far between. So, yeah, that was really night and day between NBA. And to top it all off, I was not really a basketball fan. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I was not a hardcore fan. So I think if I was, maybe I would have loved it more. But
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, we've interviewed some people from the game industry on our show, and you can just tell the people that work in the game industry, they're really dedicated. They really love games. That's like all they do with their spare time. So I can imagine, yeah, being at the NBA, working for the NBA rather, it's probably you feel a little disconnect if you're not a huge fan.
yeah, I'm not a huge fan, but I love the people. I was, people on my team were great. And the technology we were working with it was actually pretty cool. Throughout my career before I went into A/B testing, I pretty much everything I touched was a CMS. So we got to build the CMS and the websites that the league site and all the team sites and NBA and the D League. So it's pretty cool that we were building. Even though I wasn't a fan of the subject matter so much, we were able to do some really, really cool things.
Awesome. I don't know if you're a fan of Game of Thrones.
Yes, yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah. Do you think George R. Martin is ever going to finish the books?
Uh, he better, man. He better. Yeah, that was different because I was, a real big Game of Thrones fan. I had watched the first season and I just absolutely loved it. And then to be hired there, and I was there. We were in the office and it was premiere night for season 2. I mean, that was really exciting. That was really the coolest thing. Um, just to give you an idea how things have changed, or kind of changed the subject, but how things have changed. It was Game of Thrones season 2 premiere. We're all there. We actually had a bottle of champagne ready to open if we got 100,000 concurrent streams. So, which is nothing, by the way. We do 5 million every night, now.
Wow.
So, uh, so. Uh, so we were watching the little chart go up, and we were at 90,000, 95. We hit 100,000, and everybody was celebrating, and then we hit 105, and we crashed, and we were down for a couple of hours after that, and that made the news. So um, now 100,000 is like the show you never heard of on a Tuesday night is getting about that. So.
Wow, that's insane. What practices did y'all have to implement going forward to be able to scale to such a large user base?
Well, one of the at that time we had physical machines in physical locations. So there was, I think we had 3 locations around the country, and it was actual machines that somebody could go up to, and it was so different from now. And we're 100% AWS. So if we're getting too much traffic, and we'll scale up. And we've learned a lot of lessons on how to handle, like for Game of Thrones, for example. It's premiere night. It's going to be 1 million people at a time pressing the play button exactly at the same time. So how do you handle that? You can't scale up on demand at that point, but you have to know we're having a tentpole event. Let's scale up all the services beforehand and make sure we can handle the horde of people that are going to come in. And you know um, that has really been the difference from having physical machines where, if it doesn't matter if you get 10 people or 1 million people, you have those machines. That's all you have to be able to scale when you need it, and on demand.
Now, for our listeners, can you just kind of clarify what you mean by scale up?
Yeah, so we use a technology called Kubernetes, and And so in Kubernetes, you have this concept called pods. And so each one of the pods is running our service. So we have, for example, we have a feature flag service. So it's like it's a Tuesday morning, and it's, we're not getting much traffic. We'll probably be at the minimum number of pods for that service. Probably have 10 pods. Now, if we all of a sudden got an influx, then there's this thing called Istio mesh, and it'll determine that, hey, traffic is getting big. You better scale up. And then we'll have 20 pods or 30 pods or 40 pods to handle that additional traffic. And it doesn't happen instantly. There's a little bit of a lag for the scale up, but generally, for the kind of things that we do, it works very well.
So it has to do with the site traffic.
Yeah, well, the requests coming to our particular service. Now, since we're a feature flag service, every time you load the app, you're calling our service, because there's configurations in there, and there's also flags to turn on and off features. So we are pretty closely tied to traffic. But there might be other things like the catalog. Maybe they're doing a catalog ingestion, so that's going to need to scale up, but it's not really has to do with traffic.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's been pretty interesting watching the progression of technology. Like you mentioned, having physical servers, then moving to the cloud. And now I think the new era is just different AI implements.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We use machine learning. I talked about, we use Copilot and GitHub Copilot, and we use ChatGPT, but we also have whole teams that do machine learning to figure out, if this person watches this, what else are they going to like, for recommendations. And we can also do things like, see if people are at risk from leaving. And so we can detect that with machine learning. So very, very powerful. And I think we talked about this, right, earlier, is that right now I found that AI and machine learning has really been a useful tool that has made things better for us, and doesn't really look like it's going to affect our jobs right now, besides taking away some of the tedium, which is very welcome. So I hope it continues down that road. But when you can create an entire game just by prompting, a few lines in one of these tools, that's a little scary. But as of right now, I think we still have jobs.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned one of the benefits was it's able to write unit tests for you.
Yeah. I mean, that is huge. I mean, you writing unit tests and doing it well, that could take an easy 20% of your bandwidth. And especially as you're writing new features or heavily refactoring existing features, it really is a big chunk of time. And then to be able to say, hey, write unit tests for this, for this Go file, and it does it generally pretty well. I mean, you still have to look at it and make sure that it's doing what you expect it to, but it's 90% there. So instead of spending an entire day on a week-long task on unit tests, now you spend a half hour. So
Wow, it's insane.
Yeah, it's really been a huge cost saving for us, and we can do the cool stuff. The algorithms, creating things that are easier for our customers to use, doing things faster. We can concentrate on the stuff that human beings like to do.
Yeah, what's just amazing to me is just how quickly things have progressed. It just seemed like 2 or 3 years ago, this technology was just being introduced, and then it just grew in magnitudes in terms of capabilities.
Yeah, I mean, it really has, and that's kind of the scary part, because right now it's our friend, but in 3 or 4 years when it can just do everything, that's a little scary. But hopefully we keep it as a tool to allow us to do the creative parts, the things that human beings like to do, and have it do the tedious parts. And I'm hoping it continues down that road.
Yeah, I know we've had a lot of episodes about AI, or we often ask our guests about AI. It is one of those things where me and Kevin have talked about, okay, the worker robot, the droid that just does the dishes and prepares the dinners. Do you want that thing? Do you want that machine to be sentient? And I think me and Kevin are kind of on the same page with no, you don't want that to be sentient because at a certain point it may realize, hey, why am I doing all this work? I'm not getting paid. I'm not getting any benefits. I'm just slaving away right here.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's where the word robot comes from. If I remember correctly, it actually comes from, I think it was a Slavic word that meant slave. And, um, you know, if they do become sentient, then yeah, then I think they deserve the same rights that we do. But how do you test if it's sentient? That's really sort of the tough thing. Is things seem really smart and they can talk. The whole Turing test was not a very good test because these things will pass the Turing test with flying colors. Um, but uh, but when does it become conscious? When does it become sentient? That is that's a tough thing to determine. But I hope they don't. Maybe I hope they do, then we don't.
Well,
So
have you ever seen that show Westworld?
yeah, absolutely. And
That's HBO, right?
that's HBO, and I
Yeah,
really
that's HBO.
yeah, I loved the first season of that. I think it kind of went downhill after that, but
Yeah, the first season is amazing. The third season, they get way too far out there.
yes, exactly. So, but the concept is really cool, and then there's this new type of muscle for these robots. It looks exactly like Westworld, um, um, where the way it moves and it has actual like muscles as opposed to little motors. So it looked exactly like Westworld. So
Wow.
yeah, we're getting closer.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
I've actually heard they're using like human brain tissue to do computing. It's like much more efficient than traditional computing.
Yeah, I did. I read an article on that, and yeah, we're getting into scary territory there. I mean, because now you're using actual human brain tissue, and you get enough of that, then it's actually going to really be conscious, like human being conscious. I think we're playing God at that point, and that's a little scary.
Yes. Did you think that we'd be at this point, like maybe in the 80s or 90s, that by 2024 we'd be having robots and you know super advanced AI, or did you think we'd be less or more advanced than that?
Well, it's kind of funny. We're more advanced in some ways than I ever thought possible, but less advanced in other ways. I thought we would have solved a lot of our social problems, um, but we haven't. Obviously, I thought we would have had a bigger impact on poverty, on hunger, on things like that. I thought we would have worked towards solving those kind of problems, but we didn't. We kind of went the opposite way, and uh,
Yeah.
yeah. But I don't want to get too political. But uh, like the having this extension of your body, which is our cell phones, our smartphones. I didn't see that coming. Where it's really an extension of you, and you can have anything in the world at your fingertips, any bit of information, there it is. Uh, uh, for you to grab. And I don't know how did we manage things before that? How did we settle bar arguments? So uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So that I definitely think is more advanced than I thought. But also, flying cars, that's not never going to happen. So maybe with AI it could happen, but um,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think I've actually seen like flying car prototypes, but obviously it's not like common. It's more amongst like the rich or something like that.
Um, yeah, I've been seeing flying car prototypes. I mean, they've had them since like the 30s, where they've had these flying car prototypes. But most people could not be a good pilot. So I think
Yeah.
once we, now we're seeing these sort of drones that are automatic and driven by AI. I think maybe now we have a chance. If people aren't involved, it probably would be safe enough.
If you have the robot driving the ship,
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So really, I mean, it's really the phone and being constantly connected to the internet is something that I didn't see coming in the 90s at all. It just
Now, what about social media? I know me and Kevin have talked a lot about social media in the past, and I, for one, think it's pretty toxic overall.
it is. It really is toxic overall, and um, it's actually brought me down some rabbit holes that, looking back, I kind of regret. Um, and so I use it. I use it very, very, very sparsely now. I barely go to Facebook anymore. When I used to go on there and have political arguments all the time. Um, I, uh, I look at Instagram occasionally just to see, hey, my friend went to Bali last month. That kind of thing. But I don't interact like I used to, because it was toxic, and it actually did give me anxiety. It gave me anxiety. Um, uh,
Right, like you're always checking, oh, did I get a like on that post I just posted, or this story? How many people watch my story? You keep checking it over and over.
for me, it was more about the political arguments that I was having online, which right now, to me, being a few years older than, I just, it feels so stupid to me now. Why was I doing that? For what? To what end? Was I going to change anybody's mind? So that's what was stressing me out.
And it's also pretty interesting how technology has affected real life. I remember, growing up in the 90s, you see all kinds of people outside interacting with each other, but now you drive around the neighborhood, it's like a ghost town.
Yeah, and you see these pictures of people at concerts where everybody has their phone recording it.
Oh my God, yeah. No one is in the moment. They're just videotaping the moment.
I totally agree with that. We got to get back in the moment. We got to get back to living real life. I mean, use the phone as the tool that it is, which is still very important. But let's go out there and do the real thing. I think that's really important, and I think uh, I think people are starting to try to do that. So I hope that really comes to fruition, and people to go to a
Well,
concert and have nobody filming it would be great.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I mean, one thing that me and Kevin have talked about in regards to social media is you have preteen or early teenage girls winding up with bulimia, anorexia, because they're looking at these models, they're looking at these influencers who have these, Photoshop bodies, and they're thinking that that's real life. So they start, throwing up, or they stop eating. It's that, to me, is the highly toxic part of social media.
Oh, I absolutely agree there. I mean, these children just growing up way too fast. Let's let them be children. Um, so totally agree with you there. It's untenable, and it really does cause a lot of harm.
Yeah, like you said, just let kids be kids. Well, let's not inject into them the powers that be. Being you have your smartphone, you could, like you said, you can look up anything, you can know anything at the tip of your fingers.
Yeah, exactly, exactly right.
I think that's the huge point is like keep technology a tool, don't make it something that you're merged with or that is ruling over you. And it's just amazing that a lot of technologists, people who've been in the industry for decades, we're starting to agree like, hey, this is too much, enjoy it, but you don't let it take over your life.
Yeah. I don't know how you can um, really like push that forward. How do you make that happen? So I think it has to be the general will. It's just people seeing the harms and making a change.
Absolutely. And I know, Kevin, I think we've talked about this before. There's people in Silicon Valley where they won't, they have kids and they won't let their kids anywhere near the stuff that they're working on. So no cell phones, no tablets, no social media. And it's just really interesting. The people creating a lot of these products are specifically not giving it to their kids.
They know how toxic it is, right? Exactly. Yeah.
It's essentially like a digital drug dealer.
A digital drug dealer. Yes, exactly. Yeah, and they are worrying about how many likes do we get, who looked at my thing, who commented on it, and that's where they they get their self-worth from, which is really scary.
But yeah, man, we're at the top of the hour, man. It was awesome having you on, man. But did you want to leave our audience with any closing thoughts before we close the show?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So we talked about a lot of subjects here, but I just want to say really appreciate you having me on. Hopefully my stories were interesting to your listeners. I think I do have a different I took a different path than a lot of people. I hope some of my comments about managing people and having respect for your team and how you grow a team. I hope that helped to inspire some managers out there.
Awesome, man. Yeah, we definitely appreciate you for coming on. And anytime you want to come back, just let us know. We'll have you back.
I would love to do that at some point. Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for coming on, man.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll catch y'all next